Every time I start a journey by bicycle, I have this overwhelming sensation of doubt and worry about everything that could go wrong on a trip like this. You know, having to adjust to the bike and making sure you have all the gear you need with you, knowing that in the night you're going to have to find a place to pitch your tent, knowing that the first climb is going to be imminent, and things like the weather, there being rain in the forecast or freezing temperatures overnight. But I found that as long as I do this over and over again, and I've done a fair bit of bikepacking in the past few years, that as long as I chew through these first layers, and no matter the journey or the route, there's always a moment where things change and everything starts getting better. And I think this leaving of the comfort zone and then discovering that there's a lot of things that you actually don't need and don't rely on, and you know, you don't have to miss, that it's a very healthy process in discovering what is actually important. And I found that the Maestrazgo Loop, which is about a 4-day type of route, I would say, at least that's how long I took to ride it, provides a beautiful platform to discover this for yourself in exactly the way that you please to do so. There is the possibility to camp and to be very self-reliant and cook your own meals, or to stay in hotels in the little villages that the whole route connects you with. The maker, Ernesto Pastor, he's known for the Montañas Vacías route in Teruel, which serves a similar concept and is a bit bigger. It's to bring a bit of life and contribution to the small villages that have quite a dwindling population here in Spain. And in the Maestrazgo Loop, this is no different. It goes through a handful of villages that are all quite small, that don't have much of a population left, and in some cases are completely abandoned. And being able to ride into a village like that and stay at a hotel for the night, have a meal and pay a little bit of money to the community actually gives a really good feeling and makes it easier to step away from those initial doubts, at least for me. So when I started the trip, the first few hours were a bit rough, and there was a lot of climbing and rain, and then I found this hotel in Puerto Mingalvo and slept up, and the next day everything already felt completely different. Sun had come out a little bit, the rain had gone, there was a fierce wind. But on my way I found a little village called La Estrella, and I think for the first time then I realized something really important through the experience of being there. You see, when I arrived in town, there were a handful of houses, there was a church and some visitors in the square. But the town is actually completely abandoned. There's no one living there. And the last couple to leave had lived there for about 45 years, just the two of them, until she eventually had to go to a residence. And I met one of the old residents actually in the town, who was just visiting to show people around, and he had the keys to the church. And he was telling me about his thoughts on people moving to the bigger cities, living together so closely, and how he thought that people stop appreciating the luxuries of modern life. Things that in a village like that you do have to struggle a bit for sometimes. You know, finding water and transport out of there, going to get food, etc. And he said that in the cities people stop appreciating those things because they're there every day and you have such easy access to them that you forget how special it actually is. And I found that that correlates quite well with bikepacking, because on a trip like this, you know, you are self-sufficient, you build up this kind of idea that it's important to carry water, it's important to plan your food, and you value much more those things that you had at home once you come back from the trip, even if it's just a weekend or so. So finding that out in this little tiny abandoned town in a canyon somewhere in the hills of inland Spain immediately set the bar for what the Maestrazgo Loop has to offer in terms of realizations and feelings, and also scenery, of course. I chose to ride this route in autumn. It's currently early November, and the colors were just stunning. The places were even more quiet than they tend to be throughout the year. And as I made my way through these small villages and the roads connecting them, I started realizing how special this route actually is. You know, on the third night, I believe, I camped on the side of a cliff, just set up my tent, cooked a meal, watched the sunset, and I had a great night with a morning waking up to one of the most spectacular towns I've seen. It's called Luengo. It's built on perched on the side of a cliff. Of course, I found an open bar there, had a coffee, enjoyed some tostadas, this very delicious traditional breakfast, and once again was able to observe the community that lives there. Some old people living together, having the greatest time of their life and not really worrying about things that are outside of their capacity. TV is always on with news, but barely anyone's watching. And that day, things just got better and better. There was this wonderful autumn scenery, beautiful trees and leaves. I reached the village of Pitarque and had a lunch there all by myself. I guess it's one of the benefits of cycling this route in early November. Spoke a bit with the young lady at the bar who was from Uruguay and told me why she'd moved to this small village in the middle of nowhere, and that the bar actually worked pretty much all year round thanks to motorcyclists and tourists and hikers, and also a handful of cyclists coming by, visiting and eating there. And as I climbed out of Pitarque, I sort of felt like now was the time to finish up the route, to make my way through the last forest stretches, cycle over the nice pistas full of gravel and dirt, slow rolling hills, and make my way to Linares, which is the highest village in Spain, at just under 1700 meters. And there was just one open hotel on the town square, absolutely no one there. And I walked inside, asked the owner if they had availability for the night. He said yes, and he was cleaning up, preparing things for the evening. And they put me up for the night in a lovely room. I had dinner again all by myself because there's just no one around on a Monday evening in November. And I had the most wonderful time being cooked for and having a bed and waking up to this incredible sunrise over town. Having breakfast again with the locals, talking around, asking me questions about why the hell I bring a camera into the cafe and film myself. And I think that more or less concludes the trip that I've just experienced. It was only 4 days. Not a lot of significant things happened. There was not incredibly spectacular scenery or, you know, high 8,000 meter mountains, crazy canyons, etc. But there was this connected experience of discovering a rural part of a country, one that's sort of holding on for dear life, fostering its communities, welcoming cyclists like me, and just providing this very inclusive, warming experience. And I think for me, that's why the Maestrazgo Loop is going to be a route that I'll remember and that I'll recommend very dearly to anyone who's interested in having a bikepacking experience like this. So by all means, if you did enjoy the video, consider looking into the route and riding it yourself. It is very, very much worth it.